We're going through, as I'm reposting these messages on the two witnesses, and I want us to see how simple all this flows together. Those on the broad road to destruction have these crazy stories where nothing makes any sense. Now, if we believe that these are the end times, or that the Lord will return in our lifetime, then the two witnesses have to be here on earth. They're going to know the word better than any of us ever could. And as it says in Revelation chapter 11, verse 3, and I will grant authority to my two witnesses. That word can just as well mean martyrs, and that's what they're going to be. They're going to be martyred. And through their preaching, teaching, death, resurrection, and rapture, we're going to have the complete work of Christ come back to Israel in those two witnesses, those two martyrs. But until that happens, until their death, resurrection, and rapture, Israel is still going to be blinded, because the time of the Gentiles will not yet be over until the middle of the tribulation. And then, through their death, resurrection, and rapture, God will open the eyes of the Israelis as a people, and they will turn to Yeshua the Messiah. But what's happening for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation? That asteroid will hit and cause the downfall of Babylon, cause the downfall of that most powerful nation upon earth. And when that nation falls, all the kingdoms of the earth will fall with it, because they depend on it, because it brings the money supply, it brings the commerce, it brings the military, it brings the structure, it brings the strength, the discipline to the world. And when that falls, the nations will fall with it. But then the kingdom of the beast and the Antichrist will rise up to bring peace and stability. And during that first 3.5 years of the tribulation, Israel will be doing what, saints? This is what they don't see. Those on the broad, the Christians and those on the broad road to destruction, they're just waiting for that temple to be built. They think it's the glory of God. But during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, it's going to be built. But who's coming there? The Antichrist is coming there. Israel is so blind at that point, they're building a temple for the Antichrist. God has a temple which is in heaven, not made of hands, not made of stones. It's us. We're the temple of God. And in the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, this is what we see in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Why is Israel still there? And what is going on? This kingdom of the beast will be these countries, these kingdoms that get together over in the Europe and the Mediterranean area to bring commerce and stability and a military back to the earth. The Antichrist will rise out of that kingdom. But what is Israel, whose eyes have been blinded for 2,000 years by God the Father? What's going to be happening with them for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation? They're working with the Antichrist in the kingdom of the beast. Look what Daniel 9:27 says. And he, speaking about the Antichrist, and he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. Everybody knows this is speaking about Israel here. Israel and the Antichrist are going to be making this firm covenant. Israel's going to be working with the kingdom of the beast and the Antichrist. And they're going to be building that temple. But it's the Antichrist who's going to come into that temple. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. And for 1 week, for this 7 years of the tribulation is what it's referring to. But in the middle of the week, at the midway point of the tribulation, at the death, resurrection, and rapture of the two witnesses, that's when that happens. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to the sacrifice and grain offering, because the temple will be there. They will have built this temple that they've made out of stone by hand. That's not the temple of God. that is of man, and the Antichrist is coming to it. God has a temple which is in heaven, which is us, and he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. And in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to the sacrifice and the grain offerings at the midway point of the tribulation, at the death, resurrection, and rapture of the two witnesses. And on the wings of abominations will come one who makes desolate. This is the coming of the Antichrist, even unto a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. This is the coming of the Antichrist, who's going to come to that temple that the Jews, for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, the two witnesses, they're preaching, they're teaching. They're there, but what's happening? Look at here in Revelation chapter 11 again. Verse 6. These have the power to shut up the sky in order that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying. No rain. This is the latter-day rain. Don't listen to those on the broad road. This is the latter-day rain. There will be no rain falling upon Israel. The latter-day rain is going to be falling out upon the Gentiles. Once the pre-tribulation rapture happens of those ready, waiting, and watching to go to the wedding feast, to have a meal, a wedding feast with the groom while the bride prepares herself for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. These two witnesses are prophesying, and no rain, no latter-day rain has fallen upon Israel. The Gentiles all around the world, once the pre-tribulation rapture happens, the rest of the church, the Gentile church, once those ready, waiting, and watching are caught up in the pre-tribulation rapture, the rest that have been left behind will see that, and they'll pray and call out to God. And the latter-day rain will fall out upon the Gentile church the last 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. But Israel's eyes will still be blind. These two prophets are there. They're prophesying. And it's keeping Israel blind. Israel is not going to receive this latter-day rain. These have the power to shut up the sky, and that in order that rain may not fall during the days of their prophesying. So this is not benefiting Israel. Her eyes are still blind. And they're building this temple that the Antichrist is going to come. All the Christians and teachers and prophesiers and prophecy teachers, they're all waiting like this is some glorious thing for the church and the Jews. This temple is coming there. It's being built there. And the Antichrist is coming. But at the death, resurrection, and rapture of the two witnesses, the Jews, the Jewish people as a whole, will reject the Antichrist. They'll turn from him, and they'll turn to God. And at that point, the middle of the tribulation, the time of the Gentiles is over. God will open their blinded eyes. They will see and call out to God. And the latter-day rain will, a wheel within a wheel. Nothing ever changes. It keeps turning. At that point, the Gentile church is taken in the mid-tribulation rapture. But God pours out his Spirit in the latter-day rain upon the Israelis, and their eyes are opened, and they turn to Yeshua the Messiah, and they call out upon him. But this rages the Antichrist. He's saying, now I'm God. You must worship me. They reject that. They turn to Yeshua. He rages against them. And for the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, his purpose will be to wipe them out. But they're being martyred. Now they've taken on this spirit just like Elijah and Elijah. They've taken on this spirit of the two witnesses. It's fallen upon them. And they're receiving this glory, this anointing. And this power is falling upon them. And they're crossing over into the life and the light of the Messiah. And that rain will fall out upon them, but the Antichrist will be martyring them. They'll be paying. They'll have that fullness of Christ. They'll pay that price to walk with God. And they will be martyred, but they will become the crowning, the top, the glory, the crowning glory of the temple of God. Christ is the chief cornerstone, the apostles the foundation, the church, the Gentiles, for 2,000 years have been building upon this temple which is in heaven, not this one made by hands, that's for the Antichrist. But we have been built upon that foundation and that chief cornerstone. But at the middle of the tribulation, that's done. That part of the temple's done. The Gentiles are taken. But now that we need the crowning top, the roof, the crown, the glory of the top of the temple of God. And that will be these Jews that will be paying with their lives as they turn to Yeshua the Messiah. And the Antichrist will want to wipe them all out. But he will come. The Yeshua the Messiah will return with us on those white horses. This, I hope, we can make this clear and understand. This is what's happening during the tribulation. The Jews are making a firm covenant with the kingdom of the beast and the Antichrist. And the preaching, teaching of the two witnesses has them still blinded. It's keeping them blinded. This latter-day rain's falling up on the Gentile saints. And the church is preaching those three messages of those three angels. Every people in their own nation, tongue, tribes, and people is preaching the gospel under the anointing of the latter-day rain. But the Jews are as blind as ever. They're building of a temple of hands, of stone, of man, that the devil is coming to. And the preaching and teaching of these two witnesses is keeping them as blind as they can be under the purpose of God until the middle of the tribulation. Once this building is built, other than the crowning glory, the top of it, for once the Gentiles are taken at the middle of the tribulation, the Jews will have their eyes opened, and they will pay with their lives to walk with God, to walk with Yeshua, and they will call upon the name of the Lord, and the Antichrist will be wiping them out by the thousands, the hundreds of thousands, right up until we return with him and put an end to the kingdom of the beast and the Antichrist.